In the last video we looked at UV mapping a cube. In this video we'll move one down the list and look at a torus. So this is a default torus in Wings 3D, and at the moment it's just got the default material on it. Now if I select the entire object and right click, I have the option of UV mapping, so I'll just left click on that and we'll go into the segmenting tool. So here we go. How are we going to break this up into separate faces that we're going to put on our UV map? Well, we begin by using segment by projection and see how that looks. Okay, right, so it's going to do that face as a circle and that face, and then it's got all these other bits. Now this might be an appropriate way to do this if, for example, this was going to be a tyre on a car, so you could have the side walls, those yellow areas, and then we could link these other bits up to be the tread on the outside, and then there's this inner circle which will be in contact with the rim. Now if that's in contact with the rim, we don't really need to UV map, and there's a few options of what we can do here. One is we could select this edge here, press L for loop, switch to face mode and say ignore those faces. So let's look at that one first. So we'll now go to right click, continue, and we'll do it by projection normal. So there you go, there's our 4 bits on the outside. Again, I'll use the arrow keys on this window so we can see our thing. If you've got multiple monitors, you could always drag this over to the other side by expanding the whole window for Wings 3D, which is handy, but since I'm recording this, I can't do that. I'll just press space to deselect. So I've got these 2 bits and these sections here. Now if this was a tread, I could link these together. So let's get these and just move those out of the way for now. And we might want to put these on top of one another just to repeat the pattern, because it wouldn't really matter because one's on the inside anyway and one might be the mirror of the other. So there's that to consider, and these 4 segments. So I'll link these up next. So I'll select that edge there and go to stitch, and then do that there and go to stitch, and do that there and go to stitch. Right. So this needs to fit into that UV mapping area. We'll get on to how you create the textures, the maps later, and associate those with the materials. So just deal with the mapping issues for the time being. So you can see, I'll just scale that so that it fits into the area. So scale, in body mode, max uniform, and it'll fit in the middle there, and then I can just move it horizontally so it's out, vertically I mean, so it's out of the way of those other 2 bits. Now you can see these lines are a bit wiggly, and that means there's going to be some distortion in the UV map. You want to see these letters being approximately square, and you don't want to see distorted areas. So can we straighten those out? Well, I watched a handy video by, I think it was Age of Armour, and I picked this trick up. So I've selected, well, select one in the middle. I know it's not a very complicated shape. One vertical line, and press L for loop, and then G to extend that to the rest of the selection. And then you can right click and you can scale, and we'll do scale horizontally, and you can see how doing that does all these wiggly lines. If you hit the tab key and hit 0, they'll all scale up nice and vertical, which is handy. Now the spacing on these might be a bit oddly distributed. You know that each of these areas is going to, these lines is going to be the same length. So there's another command here which is distribute, and if we distribute horizontal, no, I didn't want to do that way. It gets difficult to remember which is which. So if I go select and inverse and then distribute horizontally, okay, that distributes those lines out. Now I keep getting that wrong, and like I say, I'm no UV mapping expert. This is just the fact that I've done so much of it in the last few days. I want to make some videos so I can recall at a later date what I did. So there you go. Now those are all distributed nicely and evenly, which means that the map won't have that distortion. So I could put my tread image there, but we've still got these other 2 bits. Now supposing I want to overlap them, so let's select that one and select that one, right click, and yeah, apparently I should really avoid using overlapping UV maps because that limits what the texture artist can do, but you might want to do it just to save the amount of work you're going to put in. So if we did this, the center, we can overlap them, and then we've got the wonder whether or not we want to mirror image or not on the other side. So if we look at these letters and try and work out what the situation is, you see that might be okay if you had a picture of the side wall, but it might not be very good if you wanted a line of text to apply. So this mode depends on what kind of resources you've got. The other thing is we've got this area here, which I said, well, it's got the default grey material on it. So there's a few considerations here. We can select this default grey material. Now we could hide that, right? And now if we'd hid that and you wanted to get it back, you just select the geometry again and then right click when you're in face mode on hide, and that'll bring those things back. Alternatively, I could do a loop here, switch to face mode. I could turn those into a hole, and you can see now we've got this one-sided geometry going on. And then if I wanted the hole back, something different happens from hiding. So select the entire thing and then right click on hole, and what it does is it brings adjacent geometry back. The hole has reappeared, but we've lost the geometry that we had in there. It's just like we deleted those faces. So if you've done the deleting of the, I'll go back, I'll use Control Z. Okay, I'm just going back to it. If I just deleted those faces, that's the effect, and then gone hole, they would disappear. If you want a hole back, say on this side but not on the other side, go G, select those faces, and when you right click on hole, it'll bring back the geometry that's next to the faces you'd selected. So you can see we've still got the hole on this side. So that's just dealing with hole. Let's put that back in there. Now alternatively, having done that, you could use bring the hole back like this, and then select those faces, and you could intrude the shape. Now when you intrude and you've already got some UV mapping, the intruded faces will get the UV information off the faces that you intruded from, but this edge here, which is totally created, will get the default. So that would have to be dealt with separately. So you can see, just even in this simple example, things have got quite involved. But this map now is not that helpful if I'd got a line of text but I wanted the text to go round the outside. So we'll go back a few stages. So let's get back to a stage where we've got some geometry, and there we go. I want to break it up in a different way. So in this case I can right click and press the middle button, and then it'll keep the cuts and allow me to do another UV map over this. So I've not, unless I specifically tell it not to, it'll UV map again according to what cuts I've got. So I've lost all the distortion. So if I did continue by what did I do? Projection normal last time. We've gained these extra bits because of this face, and you can see those are badly stretched, and we've lost the distribution on these bits. You see, because I'd stitched those back up, then that's got overlapped on itself and it's mirrored through on these sections, so it's all gone a bit pear-shaped. But it doesn't matter, because you can just keep doing it and doing it again. So I'll select the entire thing. I'll just force a total start from scratch, and we'll do over on this shape. So what I want to do is have this cut, but I want to unfold it in a different way. So what options have I got? I select the entire lot, and we'll give it a segment by feature detection. Okay, and then we'll continue by unfolding and see what we've got. Oh, well, that looks quite promising, except for these odd bits sticking out here. So if I could sort these out into two flat areas and then link them up, then I'd have it folded out in a way that allow me the text to run around the outside, I think. So what I'll do is I'll just close that window, and we'll use the option to have another go. And you can see it's retained the cuts, but I want to adjust for those odd little bits sticking out. So I'll unmark these oddments for cutting. So just go unmark those edges, press space, go back to edge, and then I'll just make sure I've got a cut there, and mark those edges for cut. Then now they've been done, I can see I've got a cut all the way around that side, a cut around that side, and a cut along that top edge there. So we'll continue by unfolding. We end up with these two segments. So what I'm going to do is stitch those together along that edge there. So just select stitch. It's come off at a bit of a funny angle, but I can straighten that out. So actually those edges are selected there. If I got that edge and made that orientated with the y-axis, which I use my rotation option here. So to chart Y, that's nice and horizontal, press L for loop and G, and then I can straighten this out with scaling. Or I could try the distribute straight away, and maybe that'll fix it. So I'll distribute that vertically and see what happens, and then select inverse and distribute it horizontally. Okay, you can see it's not straightening the edges up, so what I'll do is I'll scale that, let's see, vertically, so tab 0, and those select and inverse, and scale that horizontally, I think. Yeah, that's the one. Tab 0, and now I've got a nice even grid. Select the entire thing, right click, and use scale to max uniform. So now I'm in this position where if I was to put some text across the middle of that, I know it's not a very efficient use of UV space in this case, but we're interested in the way that the text is running around it, then it goes round there and we've got a seam. How do we work out where the seam is? Well, we can see it there, but if we weren't sure, we could just highlight an edge like so, and then press L for loop in this view, and you can see it's highlighted the edge of my seam. So maybe I wanted the seam there and not there. Well, I could cut things up in here, so if I select that edge there, it should have selected it in here, so there's that. I could cut it there, which means that should now be two separate bits, so I can move that vertically to show you that, and then stitch it back on here. So if I select a line on here and then go back to this window and press L for loop, you can see that edge has been highlighted. You can't loop an open end in here, it doesn't recognize that as a loop. So if I select that and press L for loop in this view, it won't extend. It'll extend one here because that is a loop in this view. It's a bit weird, but that's just the way it works. So select the outer edge here, hold your mouse pointer on this screen, press L for loop, right click, and then stitch it together, and I've now effectively moved where my cut is to there, which is one way of doing it. Or alternatively, I've already gone over 10 minutes.